I bought a .cpa domain. How do I feel about it? I think there's a bunch of different layers to this discussion, but I also have a pretty major overarching concern. So let's look at how these domains work, consider whether buying it is a good idea, and probably torpedo my nomination for Outstanding Young CPA in the process. Anything for the internet points, right? Sorry, Barry. So how does it work? First off, are you a CPA? No. Okay. Just kidding. So, to be eligible to apply for a CPA domain, you need to be one of two things: a CPA firm with a license issued by your state board of accountancy, or an individual with a license issued from a state board of accountancy. Now, other notable reasons they may throw your application out: your firm with CPAs, but not a licensed CPA firm. The domain you requested would make Barry Melancon blush. Or your firm isn't in the US or Canada. That's right, this is our top level domain. Regardless of how you feel about CPA gatekeeping, whether propping up a credential is beneficial for the profession right now, restricting this domain geographically? Really? But it gets even more interesting if you actually go through the purchase process and set it up. So today, the only place you can buy these domains is through the all caps AI CPA, and by traditional domain standards, there are still fantastic domains available. Earlier this year, I tweeted some winners that were still out there: LLC.CPA, Partnership.CPA, QuickBooks.CPA. I mean, holy smokes. These domains cost $225. .com domains are $6. When you apply, you enter all your CPA license information, so this will always be tied back to your identity. But what's the process look like after you buy? First, you're gonna get a receipt from Stripe, no less. Okay, Barry. Next, a notification that your application is being reviewed. It isn't immediate. In my case, it took 3 days for the application to be approved. And this is where things get a little weird. You're required to use Encirca as your domain registrar, which is a little annoying because I have all my domains elsewhere. And the rationale the AICPA gives is that they need to integrate their eligibility platform with the registrar. Okay, it took 3 days for my application to be accepted though, and if there was actually a direct integration there, you'd think it'd be instant, but okay. And Encirca, I don't know anything about them, but about half the Encirca pages they link to from the confirmation emails don't even have security certificates, which is kind of shocking. But their email footer says they're one of the strongest. Not the strongest, but among the strongest. So the implementation, little touch and go, and the registrar service itself managing your DNS settings is really odd. Not a great experience, but I've had my domain up there for 6 months now. Once I overcame those initial hurdles, all's been fine. So kind of goofy, but we're kind of circling the real issue here, right? Should I actually use a .cpa domain? We all know the domain space is getting increasingly crowded. The price of entry for a 4-letter .com domain in 2021 is about $35K, and that's just some random letters. Any recognizable 5-letter domain, it's gonna start in about the same ballpark. Your .com domain now needs to be so obscure, and even then it seems, for some reason somebody else has already got it and you gotta go look at a different top-level domain like .net or .co. But the fact you could have bought QuickBooks.CPA last April, the fact that you can still buy Zero.CPA, BTC.CPA, Legacy.CPA, TikTok.CPA, Twitter.CPA, Meme.CPA, YouTube.CPA, OnlyFans.CPA means you get a pretty tidy domain. Much more straightforward than the .com alternative, and honestly, kind of pushes me down the spectrum of maybe something like this could be a good idea, especially if the niche you're targeting can be spelled out directly in your domain like dental CPA or veterinary CPA. I think right now this is the greatest upside of the CPA domain, and this is kind of what the AI CPA is really doubling down on. But what are the counter arguments? To name a few, depending on how you feel about credential gatekeeping, using a CPA domain is definitely doubling down on the narrative that we're CPAs and that makes us better, smarter. Insert adjective here. There are also some very real technical hurdles with new top-level domains. Folks on Twitter shared it created some firewall issues. Many services that validate the email address you provide on sign-up may not recognize that top-level domain. For example, dropping your email into a field, you get an error, not a valid email address. But I mentioned at the top, I have an overarching concern, and this is the main one for me. What % of your clients today know that there is a .cpa top-level domain? None percent. And I'll tell you the context in which I think that matters. .com domains benefit today from immediate recognizability. When you see someone's web address, nobody's telling you that's a web address. You recognize it as such because you see .com at the end. But if that same bit of text didn't include .com or included something you didn't recognize, would you know it's a website? It probably depends on the context in which you see it. If you see it digitally, it's probably linking directly to that site and no big deal. But if you see it in the wild, On a business card, for example, I'm not sure that person's even gonna realize it's a web address. Let's say you're Evergreen CPA. You're gonna put your web address at the bottom of the business card. Is it even clear this is a web address? Probably not. You could aid that by maybe adding an icon next to it, like a globe or a hyperlink icon. And astute observers may be able to figure it out because your email address will end with a .cpa, but you definitely lose the immediacy of .com domains. Now, the AI CPA actually addresses this directly in their FAQs. Quote, will a new .cpa domain confuse clients? Moving your firm to a new .cpa domain does not need to be confusing for your clients. Clients are most familiar with your domain by visiting your website and sending you email. We will be providing tools and services to make this process simple and inexpensive. That's probably the case for ongoing clients, but not for new clients who are discovering you. If I'm gonna put up a big sign on the side of my building, Evergreen CPA, and I want them to go to my website, what am I gonna put on that sign? Evergreen.cpa? I'd hazard a guess 9 out of 10 people won't realize that's your web address. Now, that is the case today, and it may change over time. So maybe the happy medium here is to pick up the domain that makes sense for your firm and see how things develop. You never want to bet against the internet. In the case of virtually every other top-level domain, if you wanted to get a domain there, you needed to do it early. So still may be worth picking something up just so you don't regret it later. Only thing you got to watch out for is the AI CPA's squatting rules. If you buy it, you got to use it. So would you consider buying a CPA domain? Drop a comment just below that like button. I've heard some interesting takes on this one. Especially share your experience if you've already made the transition, if you're pointing clients to that. I would love to hear about that. Thanks for tuning in. Love you, Barry Melancon, and I'll catch you in the next one. When you apply, you enter all your CPA license. First video I've done in like 2 weeks. I've been sick as F. There's a tiny person upstairs playing a harmonica right now. Oh man. 1, this is the stanky face. 2, slightly stank. Neutral. 4, 5. My mother could see me now.